In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use a tool called Speculid. It's a free tool by Leo Dion of Bright Digit, and what it does, it lets you automate the process of generating your assets for use in Xcode. So the example that I'm going to give is one that I use all the time, where I have a vector file, I have a sketch file, and I'm going to export that, and I'm going to generate all the different app size icon files I need automatically using this tool. So go over to speculid.com, I'll put a link in the show notes, and be sure to sign up here as well, put your email address in. He doesn't spam you, and it gives you lots of useful information. So what is this tool and how does it work? Well, what you do is you can give it a file and it will generate the assets that you tell it to generate. So in my case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it an SVG file, and I'm going to tell it to automatically generate all the different size app icons that I need and to put them in the asset catalog for use in Xcode for me automatically. An extra bonus here is you can actually put it in as a run script, build run script, where every time I do a build, it'll rebuild those icons for me, those assets for me. So I know that I've always got the latest. So why might you want to do it that way? Well, if you've ever worked for a big company or some projects, they're pretty renowned for changing their branding quite often or changing their mind. So by updating this one file, you can have it regenerate the new icons for you with every build and know that it's the right graphics without having to go in and check them manually. So how does this work? Well, the first thing you do is you need to download and install it. Personally, I like to use Homebrew, so I went ahead and did the Brewcask install here. If you don't want to do it that way, you can also grab it directly from GitHub and install it that way manually. Well, if you do it manually, what you're also going to need to do is to run this command here to copy the application to your user local bin. It's actually a command line application. You can also use Fastlane here as well if you want to do that, and I'm sure there's different other ways you can script it in because it is a CLI tool after all. So what you do is you create a configuration file, which is what we're looking at an example of here. And this example configuration file tells Speculid how to go ahead and find the source file and then what to process that into. We'll go through all of this in a second. I'm actually going to set one up and show you. So let's go over and get started. So the first thing I've got here is this really just dreadfully awful icon. Please never make icons like this. But it's actually perfect as an example here in this video because it's so bad you can't miss it when it goes into place. So first thing we're going to do is I've set it up to export this as an SVG. You don't have to use SVG files. The application, the Speculid application supports different formats. I'm using this one because it's vector and will scale nicely to all the different sizes. So I'm just going to go ahead and export this, and I've actually got an application already built up here, so I'm actually just going to call this example icon, and it's going to save an SVG file for me. Alright, so that's that done. Let's get rid of Sketch. We do not need to save that. Okay, let's go over to Xcode. So what I've got here is a single view application that I've built. It doesn't have any icons yet or anything at all. I haven't done anything with it. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a file to this project. So what I'm going to tell it is to use the file that I've just created. Now if I go across here and if I go to the desktop and I go into the example application, you can see example icon.svg, the file that I just exported. Can't miss it, looks horrible. Okay, I'm just going to add that to the project just so it's conveniently here, right? You can see it right there. But let's go back to the assets catalog. Again, no icons here. So what it's going to do is it's going to populate each of these icons for me automatically. Now to do that, we need to build the configuration file. So let's go over to the terminal here. You can generate this file any way you want to make it. It's a JSON file. I'm going to do it from the terminal just because it's convenient and I'm used to doing things that way. So if I do a listing here, you can see again, here's my example icon file. Right, and there's my assets catalog. So I'm going to create this new file, and I'm just going to touch .speculid. The reason I'm giving it that file name will become apparent in a minute, right? But I recommend just going with this file naming convention here. You can actually have more than one of these configuration files if you want. It's all there in the documentation. For this example, I just need the one. And now just going to use Vim just to edit it. I just very simply from the terminal here. I'm going to paste in what I need because I know that I've already got it here, and I'll explain it to you line by line. It is a JSON file, so we need to format it correctly. Just put in some curly braces. Okay, so what have we got here? Well, let's just go back and look at the web page for a second. So what it expects certain things, and there's some optional parts you can put in. You're going to tell it the set where you want it to go, right? So in our case, it's going to be the assets catalog, and I'm going to replace the app icon file. Okay, so that's going to be where it's going to end up. The source is going to be my example icon file. You can see here they've used a PNG file. Again, mine's an SVG. The geometry here is set to 128, and I'm going to go with 128. And the reason being, if I just scroll right down to the bottom here, it's basically going to make a 1x for me. Now, again, because it's going to scale it to the different sizes, it doesn't matter too much because I'm using a vector file, so it's going to be fine. And honestly, I strongly recommend using vector files because you'll thank yourself in the long run as icon sizes and everything else changes over time with different screen resolutions. Now, going back to the configuration here, let me just find it. There it is. You can also set an optional background color. I'm not going to do this because I want mine to be transparent. And you can also tell it to remove the alpha if you want. Again, I'm not going to do that because I want mine to be transparent. So let's just go ahead and hide that there. So what I've got here, again, my assets catalog, right? You can see it right here. I've got my assets.xc assets file. And in that, well, essentially it's a folder. And inside that folder, I'm actually going to call it, what I need is the correct name. And if I just go back over to the web page here, the one I'm actually going to want is this one right here because it's an icon, right? So I'm just going to paste that in there. So it's actually going to replace my app icon.app icon set, which is the one that exists in Xcode right now. I need to give it the source file name, which, as we know, I saved it as example icon.svg, and I'm going to leave the 128 as 128. Just going to go ahead and save that configuration file now. It may seem a little strange at first if you're not used to these kind of setups for these configurations, but believe me, it's very straightforward and very simple. Now, with that out the way, what I want to do is, like I said, I want to have this run. I don't want to run it from the command line manually. I want to have it run every time I run the build phase. Now, what you can do, if we scroll down here, you'll find there's a wonderful example. Again, these instructions are just fantastic, right? It even explains setting up the file here like I just did. So again, Speculid.com is going to be your best source. But what I want is I'm going to add a run script build phase, and I'm just going to take the script here and copy it. Now, this is where you're going to see that naming was important, because it's actually going to look for any file called whatever it may be, .speculid. I've only got the one, but it goes to show you right here, you can actually have multiple files, right? So you could have one file configuration for your icon, you could have another for some image assets, whatever it is. You don't have to have one, you can have it run through a whole batch process on this. Now, I'm just going to go over to Xcode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my build phases, and you can see that I've already pasted it in here, right? I've got the script. They're ready to go. So with that, everything should be set. Let's go back and watch our assets catalog as I run this. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do Command B to run a build, and hopefully, if everything's correct, we should see it automatically populate all these icons for me from that SVG file. And there it is. How cool is that, right? I didn't have to make the files and drag them around in each of the slots. It's done it all for me. Look at that. Right? We've got all the iPhone ones. We've got all the iPad ones. If this was a Mac application, it would do the Mac application ones for me as well. And you can't miss it because that's a really horrible icon. Stands out a mile, right? But how awesome is that? I mean, basically, it's done it, right? It's done everything I wanted. And I'm going to create a new file. we're just going to make another one, right? And I'm just going to make it 512 by 512. I just want to show you that it basically updates every time. And I'm going to leave it like that, and I'm going to make a rectangle in here, or let's just make square. It doesn't really matter. I'll just put it in there as a gray square. I'm going to make it exportable, and I'm going to export it as an SVG. I'm going to export it, and I'm going to use the same file name, right? So I'm overriding my example icon.svg. I'm just going to save it, replace it, quit Sketch. Nope, don't need to keep that. I'm going to run the build again. And you can see that it's gone ahead and regenerated all of the icons for me with that horrible, now great icon. But you get the idea. I updated that one file, I ran a new build, and it's updated all the icons. So this is really just a fantastic tool, right? All the instructions are here. I just wanted to run through them quickly and show you, how to get started with it. It covers many different programs, many different formats. Again, Speculid.com. It's just a fantastic time saver for generating assets. And again, thank you to Leo for creating the application. Hope it's been helpful. Like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments, and reach out to Leo. It's just a brilliant application. It really is such a huge time saver. All right, that's it. Speak to you next time.